On this Monday night, changing military culture and conduct. The blistering new report and recommendations.
Together, we will deliver reforms that stand the test of time.
But will the promises be met with political will? New gun laws in Canada.
As we see gun violence continue to rise, it is our duty to keep taking action.
The boldest suite of proposed actions to control access to firearms in this country. And honoring the children taken in the Texas mass shooting. The first emotional wake for one of the 21 victims begins today.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Two big stories out of the nation's capital today, including new proposed gun laws. More on that in a moment. But first, a highly anticipated report into sexual misconduct in Canada's military is out. With 403 pages and 48 recommendations, the report details a culture that has entrenched abuses of power. It comes a year after a review formally started following allegations against senior leaders in the Canadian Forces, first brought to light by Global News. While the government is short on details and timelines, there are promises for a better path forward. Mercedes Stevenson has our top story tonight.
Madame Louise Arbour has seen her share of disturbing material as a former Supreme Court justice and a war crimes investigator. But what she heard interviewing women in the Canadian Armed Forces still shocked her.
Day in, day out, stories of young women being told appalling things like, young recruits being told, well, you should get on the pill.
Arbour says the military is an insular and outdated institution that will not change on its own.
Maybe the most striking feature was that this kind of allergy to anything that is not from inside that community, tight-knit, homogeneous. They wear uniforms. They're all alike. They aspire to all be alike.
When the Canadian Armed Forces found itself in the headlines, Arbour said it would scramble into a hyperactive reaction to appear to be doing something. New titles, public pronouncements, and PowerPoint slides, rather than tackling the root of the problems. Cultural and structural issues that have enabled toxic power dynamics and bad behavior, including sexual misconduct, to go unpunished. A situation Arbour says puts some members of the Canadian military at more risk from their comrades than the enemy. A liability, she says, for Canada.
If our people can't feel safe, if we can't attract and retain talent from all segments of Canadian society, we are going to fail Canada.
Arbour's report listed dozens of recommendations that would bring profound change to the military, including permanently moving all criminal sexual offenses to the civilian justice system, changing the way senior officers are promoted. And Arbour takes on the military college system, including Royal Military College, long seen as sacrosanct. But she says it perpetuates a don't-get-caught mentality instead of teaching accountability.
Her assessment was that these are a massive problem, that the culture in these institutions is a big problem.
But survivors of sexual misconduct say the details and funding to support change are critical.
It's easy enough to say that, yes, we need to do that. It's another matter of trying to get the money to do that.
The key thing here is what we're going to do with this information, how we're going to implement it.
Defense Minister Anita Anand says this time the government is serious about culture change.
In this moment in time, when the world appears to be growing darker, we must grab the bull by the horns and make these changes now.
Mercedes Stevenson is joining us now. And Mercedes, after hearing these recommendations and the minister's response, is there any reason to believe things will change and be any different this time around?
Well, that's really the critical question. The minister says this is a different team and that she has faith in them. There's also a political fire under this government to do something about this, because, of course, it was under former Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan that allegations against General Vance were first brought forward, and the government has been criticized for not doing enough about that. They also are self-declared feminists, which means there is a political motivation for them to do something. They are looking at appointing an external monitor. One of the key recommendations from Justice Arbour Arbour as well, who would report to the minister to help keep track of this. But at the end of the day, the question will be what the politicians do. And the interesting thing to me about this report, that's different than other ones, is that it really focuses on putting that impetus on the politicians and civilian oversight to do something.
Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. The Prime Minister was not at that news conference about military misconduct reform, but he was at another one promising to get tough on guns in this country. During a charged time in the gun control debate in the wake of the devastating mass school shooting in Texas, Canada's Liberal government is putting forward its boldest moves yet. Late this afternoon, the Liberals tabled new legislation. Abigail Bimman has been watching this story unfold and joins us now with the latest. Abigail, what is the federal government proposing?
Well, Nita, the hallmark of this plan is what the Liberals are calling a freeze rather than a ban on handguns across the country. Here's how the Prime Minister describes it.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns. As a further part of this new legislation, we're also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes.
A freeze means the government is placing big limits on who can actually buy and sell handguns going forward. The list includes law enforcement and people who need to carry guns for protection, as well as authorized sports shooting athletes. In addition to the handgun freeze, the Liberals are promising to increase maximum sentences for firearms penalties and something called a new red flag law aimed at helping victims of domestic abuse that would allow courts to require those considered a danger to themselves or others to surrender firearms.
Now, Abigail, the Liberals have long promised to take action without seeing results. Commitments in both the 2019 and 2021 elections did not become law. So what's currently missing from this legislation that the Liberals promised?
Well, a big promise in the last two elections was around amnesty, a buyback program for current gun owners. Details are still trickling out here, but it doesn't appear there's anything in this new legislation about speeding up the buyback program. And on the issue of illegal guns, the Liberals say these measures will help, but it's not clear how they'll stop guns illegally entering the country. A new StatsCan report, which noted an uptick in gun violence, said there's very little information available on the source of firearms used in crime, particularly whether a gun was stolen, bought illegally, or smuggled into the country. When we asked the Prime Minister about this, he didn't offer specifics, but said due to recent investments, double the number of illegal guns were seized last year as the year before. Gun rights advocates say the new law won't help with the problem of illegal guns, while gun control advocates think Monday's announcement is a big step forward, but not far enough.
That the problems associated with bullets flying in the streets of our urban and rural communities have virtually nothing to do with legal, law-abiding gun owners taking their firearms to and from shooting ranges. This looks a lot more political than it looks to be about public safety.
I think that is a strong decision that has been made today. And I'm very happy. They are considering a federal law on handguns, and that's a big progress.
Whether this legislation passes the House and the Senate and becomes law remains to be seen. One bill already died. Well, the Liberals are hoping it does pass and their promises can come into force by the fall. Neetu?
All right, Abigail Bimman in Ottawa tonight. Thanks, Abigail. In Uvalde, Texas, families are beginning the heart-wrenching task of saying goodbye to their loved ones as the first of 21 funerals are set to begin. As these children and teachers are laid to rest, many questions remain unanswered, and the anger over why this keeps happening intensifies. Heather Yurex-West reports from Uvalde.
There are just 2 funeral homes in all of Uvalde, Texas, and 21 funerals ahead. On Monday, the family and friends of Amarillo Garza filed in for her visitation. The little girl who died trying to dial 911 on a phone she had received for her 10th birthday.
I can't sleep. I can't sleep. The poor babies, you know. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's just horrible the way America's been going. We're the only country on the planet that has school shootings, massive school shootings.
At 2 memorials set up for the victims, mourners continue to arrive. Many have driven hours to pay their respects here, heartbroken as if these children had been their own.
As a mother, I felt like I needed to be here and show people that we care for them. You send the kids to school, and that's the safest place that you think that they are, and they're not anymore.
After meeting with the grieving families for nearly 4 hours Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden expressed hope that this time, this tragedy could finally compel lawmakers to change the country's gun laws.
I think things have gotten so bad that everybody's getting more rational about it. At least that's my hope and prayer.
While Congress has so far remained deadlocked on gun control, last week a bipartisan group of senators began informally discussing the issue in a bid to find new consensus on items like universal background checks or red flag legislation that could allow police to take guns from people who are deemed a threat.
There are a lot of states that have red flag laws. I would support a grant program to help the states that choose to go down that road. I will not support a federal red flag law.
While lawmakers continue talks, this community still has such a long and painful road ahead. The first of those 21 funerals will begin here on Tuesday as friends and family say goodbye to Amarillo Garza and her classmate Maite Rodriguez, little girls who will be forever 10. Nitu?
Heather Yurex West in Uvalde, Texas. Thanks, Heather. The battle for eastern Ukraine continues. Coming up, fierce fighting erupts as Russian troops enter a key city. Plus, the murder of a popular Punjabi singer who rose to stardom in Canada sparks anger. An intense battle is going on in Ukraine's Donbass tonight as Russian forces advance, pushing into the strategic city of Severodonetsk in the eastern Luhansk region. Russian military vehicles carrying rocket launchers have been spotted heading towards that city as Putin's military has been concentrating their offensive in that area. The governor of Luhansk says the fighting for the city is fierce and the situation is difficult. And a French journalist covering the war has been killed in Severodonetsk after being hit by shrapnel from a Russian airstrike. Frédéric Leclerc-Imhoff was seated in an armored vehicle covering an emergency evacuation operation to get as many Ukrainians out as possible when the strike happened. As Ukraine calls for more weapons to aid its frontline resistance, today the U.S. confirmed long-range rocket systems are close to being sent to Ukraine to fend off Russian forces. In Brussels, European Union leaders are working on a 6th round of sanctions to hit the Russian economy, but are struggling to agree on a proposed ban on Russian oil imports. The U.S. has already turned off the taps to Russian oil imports, but the bloc is the biggest buyer of Russian crude, which made up 27% of Europe's oil imports in 2021. An agreement is being held up by Hungary, which relies heavily on Russian crude. The killing of Punjabi hip-hop star Sidhu Moosewala has made waves in his home country of India and in Ontario, where he rose to international stardom. Shubdeep Singh Sidhu and 2 others were shot in their vehicle on Sunday in Punjab state, India, where he's from, and he later died in hospital. The artist immigrated to Brampton, Ontario in 2016 as an international student and garnered a huge following in Canada, where many of his fans are now in mourning.
I can't, I really can't express my sadness for him. He was my favorite singer.
In 4 years, his growth was from this to this. He was a legend.
Sidhu Moosewala always put on for his adopted city, rapping about Brampton, Toronto, and even Canada. As for who killed him, police in India say they're investigating the targeted shooting and are looking into a potential Canadian gang link. Ahead, political promises to stop kids in foster care from becoming commodities. In the aftermath of last Saturday's powerful storm, more than 15,000 homes and businesses in eastern Ontario are still in the dark. Crews have been working around the clock to restore service, but in some places, they're facing dangerous tangles of downed trees and utility wires. Power has been restored to more than 900,000 customers since the May 21st storm that killed 11 people. 9 of those deaths were caused by falling trees. 3 days ahead of Ontario's provincial election, 2 of the party leaders are vowing to end for-profit group homes and foster care agencies after a scathing investigation by Global News and APTN. Youth in Care said they were neglected, mistreated, and repeatedly physically restrained by workers without cause. Carolyn Jarvis was part of the investigative team that worked on this project for a year and joins us with more. Carolyn?
Neithu, we received an outpouring of response to our investigation from right across the country. People who say they too were victims of a broken child welfare system that left them scarred and traumatized. Some experts suggest one of the reasons why the system is failing is because private, for-profit operators might be putting money ahead of the best interests of kids.
The child welfare system shouldn't be a profit-making endeavor. It just shouldn't.
The leader of the Ontario NDP vowing to remove for-profit group home and foster care operators from the system if elected.
The fact that kids are not getting enough food, that they're being restrained, that they're not getting the health care services that they need, while some company reaps the profits off of that, completely unacceptable.
A Global News APTN investigation analyzed more than 10,000 serious occurrence reports from the child welfare system in Ontario from a 1-year period and found an alarmingly high number of incidents at some foster care and group homes, including deaths, injuries, missing kids, and the use of restraints. And while private operators only make up 25% of beds in the system, they account for 55% of all serious occurrence reports in group homes and foster care homes, including 83% of all physical restraints.
The for-profit sector should not exist.
Advocates for young people in care say they've known for a long time how bad things really are.
This has been a long-standing issue that we knew about on the ground. I grew up in the child welfare system myself, and it's about time that this is in the spotlight now.
The leader of the Ontario Greens echoed the call to end for-profit group home and foster care, while the Ontario Liberals did not, saying oversight of the system needs to be reviewed.
As far as I'm concerned, it's unacceptable.
Ontario PC leader Doug Ford also sidestepped the issue of for-profit care, vowing instead to increase inspections and admitting the province needs to do better.
And we're going to make sure, myself personally, I'm going to be on this right as we have been, but right after the election, that's going to be one of my key focuses.
The Ontario government is in the middle of a multi-year child welfare redesign, but there is no indication that reform will eliminate for-profit care. Neithu?
Thanks, Carolyn. Britain prepares to party. Next, the royal celebrations ahead for the Queen's historic anniversary. That is the world's most famous painting, the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, being vandalized by a man disguised as a woman in a wheelchair. Wearing a wig, he gave security the slip by faking the disability and managed to smear a cream cake on the glass casing in what appears to be a climate protest. The Mona Lisa wasn't harmed, but the painting did need a good wipe down before the next crowd arrived. The man has been taken into police custody. To the UK now, where the final preparations are underway for the country's days-long celebration of Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, marking her 70-year reign as monarch. Redmond Shannon looks at the pomp and pageantry ahead and why they aren't exactly going according to plan.
A special weekend, an event 70 years in the making, is almost here. The finishing touches on preparations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, already a spectacle for tourists and locals alike.
The work that's been done and seeing the preparation has been really incredible to see.
It looks fantastic, really brilliant.
It all begins Thursday with the Trooping of the Colour, the Queen's official birthday parade, with the royal family set to appear together on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, culminating in a Jubilee pageant on Sunday afternoon involving 10,000 people.
She's been 70 years, reign, and, in over 1,000 years of monarchy, we've never had a Platinum Jubilee, and it's probably potentially going to be the last one you'll see, so it's exceptionally important.
The busy schedule of events may prove a little too taxing for the Queen, given her age and recent health issues. One British news report says it's unlikely she will now attend the prestigious Epsom Derby horse race on Saturday. COVID-19 is affecting events too. Friday's Thanksgiving service will not involve the Church of England's most senior bishop, the Archbishop of Canterbury, after he tested positive for the virus. Amidst the pageantry and ceremony, there will be thousands of community events too. The perfect excuse for a celebration after 2 difficult years of pandemic. Cities and villages across the UK and Commonwealth will light commemorative beacons, including one outside Ottawa City Hall, a tradition that began for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee in 1897. And some 16,000 street parties are expected to take place, including some in Canada too. Stores in Britain reporting a jump in the sales of flags and party supplies.
It's good for the country, considering what we've had to put up with over the last few years. I think we should all be out celebrating and making a big deal out of it, really.
Even the Queen's favourite pups are getting into party mode too. Customers at this corgi cafe like royal lovers around the world, ready to lap it all up. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Puppuccino, they call that. And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is a stunning sunset over Osoyoos in BC's Okanagan Valley. Don't forget to send your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.